International Women's Day is traditionally celebrated every year in March, and it's grown in its importance and is now a global day to recognize and honor the efforts of women around the world. It is also a day for men and women to show solidarity with women who are struggling and fighting for their basic rights. Our celebration today is only one of many being held worldwide to highlight the achievements of women without regard to national, ethnic, religious, or political differences. It is also held to support women's struggle to achieve gender balance and equality. All of us here today share and support the vision of a world free from discrimination of all types. The IAEA is committed to empowering and increasing the participation of women as equal partners, as the DG has indicated. As the first woman to head the IAEA Department of Management, I am pleased to say that the agency has a number of initiatives in both technical and non-technical areas. DG Amano has made it a priority to improve gender balance in the organization, calling for increased recruitment, as you just heard him say, of both professional and in management posts. In addition, there are greater opportunities for young women through internships and participation in the Junior Professionals Program. So now let's turn to the program. I have always felt that one of the best ways to encourage people to realize their full potential is to identify individuals who have achieved success in their occupations. International Women's Day is a wonderful opportunity to highlight such success stories as role models to motivate women and to demonstrate that hard work, perseverance, and self-confidence can help every woman achieve whatever goal she has set for herself. We have 5 such success stories here today, and the 5th one is coming. These are members of my distinguished panel, and they're going to tell us about their path to success. They have agreed to do this during the board meeting, and I'm very, very appreciative of that. So let me introduce them to you. These women have very long CVs, so my apologies for having to shorten them in the interest of time. They also have rather long and complicated names, so I ask for your forgiveness in advance if I mispronounce them. To my left is Her Excellency Ambassador Maria Leose, who is the permanent representative of Nigeria to the international organizations in Vienna. She has served in diplomatic posts in Paris and in New York and has held senior positions in various departments at the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Then we have Her Royal Highness Princess Bajarakitayaba. Maybe that's not quite right, but almost there. She is the permanent representative from the Kingdom of Thailand. She is a lawyer by training and has had an interesting career path, serving in the Thai military, as a chief public prosecutor, and as a diplomat in New York. To her left is Her Excellency Susan Lejeune Daljerzchek, who is the permanent representative. Her name is about 15, 20 letters long, but she is the permanent representative of the United Kingdom to the UN and other international organizations here in Vienna. In addition to her career as a diplomat, serving in Singapore, Venezuela, Colombia, and Washington, D.C., I found that her background in human resources to be particularly interesting. I will be asking her for advice. Then we have Ambassador Ana Teresa Dengo, who is the permanent representative of Costa Rica. With an educational background in industrial engineering, she has had an extensive career in diplomacy, serving here in Vienna since 1998. She has covered nuclear issues at the IAEA, at the CTBTO, and was president of the Hague Code of Conduct against ballistic missiles. She has also served in posts in Washington, D.C. and in New York. So you can see that we have brought together a well-represented group of accomplished women from different parts of the world. They have technical and non-technical backgrounds. They include a lawyer, an engineer, an entrepreneur, a linguist, and a management expert. They are a mixture of single and married women. Some are working mothers, and they are all at the top of their game. So let me begin with Ambassador Leosi. I have often heard that mothers are born leaders. They have natural leadership skills and lay the foundation for their children. Can you tell us how much your family influenced you in your studies and in your career? Were either of your parents or professionals, and how much direction did they give you?
Thank you very much for inviting me and for considering me a success story. First time I heard that, and that feels good. And also, of course, I thank God for where I find myself, and also to have given me mother figures. I wouldn't say just mother, because I was brought up by my aunt and my mother. My aunt was, of course, very educated. She was a nurse, a career person that led men, and a very tough woman, a no-nonsense woman. And she got me to understand that I have to work, whether I like it or not. I'm a woman, and I have to work, and I should not expect any man to support me. So she threw me into it. And I was brought up with men, and I had to do the same thing with them, the same house chores, the same schooling, and everything. But it was, so she was a good mother figure. I had to follow her directions by force. But my mom, it was my natural mother that actually gave me the joy of working. She only had primary school education, but she achieved a lot. You know, you would never even know that she was working. My father, of course, wasn't educated at all, but he had money, so he paid for our education, the school fees, but that was all. My aunt, of course, fed me, but my mother had to provide the extras, and I was always asking her, where do you get money? You don't work. She said, oh, yes, I work. You don't see it. Because all I saw her sell were the local gaggle, and all it cost was 2 pennies a penny, and you know I would hear the sound going inside the piggy bank, pam, 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 and I thought it was nothing. I said, oh, just those pennies, and she would say they add up, and she provided everything. Many times I would be afraid to take things from her, and she said, come on, I have money, I have money. And she did everything joyfully, and she always told me, listen, nobody thinks you are doing anything, but you have to do things. Nobody's going to acknowledge that you are working, you had to work. So it was like that with her. Nobody acknowledged that she was working, but she kept working. And it's from her that I got the joy of working. My aunt gave me, you know, the idea that you have to work anyway. But she gave me the joy of working, and I've always enjoyed working.
Fantastic. That's a wonderful story. Your Royal Highness, you are certainly remarkable in what you represent to your country as a member of the royal family. Do you remember if you consciously aspired to your job, the one that you have now? Was a working princess encouraged by your family, or was that your ambition?
Thank you very much for your questions, and once again, thank you very much for inviting me to participating in this interesting event. It has also been my ambition to have a career as I'm being studied for, but it also been encouraged by my family, because my family is always reminding me, apart from your duty to your country as a royal princess, you also have yourself as a woman, as a person, that you need to dwell upon and being established. And I feel that is the right advice from my parents. After I graduated a PhD from Cornell University, I started off my career at Thailand Permanent Mission to the UN in New York. And then I can see the world in a much more broader perspective, both within an international context. And when I returned back to Thailand and worked as a prosecutor for 5 years, I can see where the law can really apply and to bridge up the differences. So I think to have a career is very much complement to my duty as a royal princess, and also I think my duty as a royal princess also complementing my career as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have just had the ambassador from the Slovak Republic join us. This is Ambassador Olga Algejerova, and she is a relative newcomer to the diplomatic community, having started her career in the business and manufacturing world. So maybe I'll just ask you directly. It was a different start from many of us who have been working in the international context, but maybe you can tell us about the turning point in your career, where it led you to where you are today, and what did it teach you?
First of all, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to this wonderful panel. And sorry to be late because I had another duties at the OAC, so I was doing my best to be on time here. Yes, there was a turnaround in my career because my whole life, more than 20 years, I was working in pharmaceutical industry as a head of export department. And I was quite happy with what I was doing because we were opening 70 new markets around the globe, trying to penetrate those markets with our products. And at once, it came nomination from my government to be Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. So it was a big change for me because the life is totally different if you work in private business and if you work for government, especially in diplomacy. Whether it was good or bad, I cannot tell, I cannot evaluate. It was different, simply different. In business, of course, you earn more money, but in government, it gives you another dimension. It's more about knowing people from another perspective, having a possibility to influence many things that are happening globally, and doing good for people. So this is something very, very different, that you are not just delivering some profits or turnovers, but something more, some additional good difference. Thank you.
Yeah. And womankind. Thank you. Ambassador Daljeršak, do you believe that successful women have a responsibility to assist young women new to the workforce to achieve success? Do you feel that this type of assistance is inherently provided by men for other men? And what role do you play in inspiring young women?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to take part in the panel. Yes, I do think it's really important. And I was asked recently by my former boss to talk about what I thought was the single most important thing that I and colleagues had done when I was doing my last job as Director for Human Resources. And I think the individual contact that I had and that colleagues had in encouraging women to aim high, to identify their potential, was probably the single most important thing I as a woman could do in order to increase the diversity, particularly at the top of the organisation I work for. I remember when I started in the Foreign Office 27 years ago, I looked up and there wasn't really any woman that I wanted to be like. There were women, but I wouldn't describe them as aspirational role models in any way. They were women who had sacrificed an awful lot, and I admired them for that, but it was not a life I wanted. And I think what we can do is show that being normal and having this sort of career is possible. And I think it's a real challenge. But I also have found it, as well as being useful to the organisation, I've also found it enormously satisfying to engage with young women at the start of their career. And as I say, to encourage them to aim high, because I have never ever found that men have any difficulty in aiming high. Sometimes men aim far too high and they overestimate their abilities, and I have never ever found that's a problem with women, just the opposite. So I think that's a real challenge for all of us. I've also found I've learned a lot from the young women I've mentored, because I think as you move up an organisation, it's quite easy to lose touch with what it feels like for some of the more junior members of that organisation. And I'm also interested in finding out how I come across to more junior staff. I think that's really important. And it's quite difficult sometimes to get that sort of feedback. And the final thing I would say, you asked whether men do this sort of thing instinctively. I think when you join an organisation like the one I'm part of, it can feel like quite an alien place. And I think one of the reasons that happens is because when you're in a minority, the majority has its codes, the majority has its interests, the majority has its social organisations and environment that it creates. And as somebody who's slightly different, that can be quite challenging. And I think men possibly don't do it consciously. But they talk about, I mean, in my organisation, they talk about sport a lot. That, you know, if you're not a football fan, on Monday morning, you can feel slightly out of it. So I think it's up to us to start talking about the things that interest us and make them sometimes feel a little uncomfortable.
Right. No, that's really good advice. No, I find that the sports discussion really gets you in the circle, and actually, I think it's good for women to think about sports because they're actually great learning tools, and I think that there's so many analogies that you can make to life, to work in sports, and so I don't think it's such a bad idea for women to get a little bit interested in that subject itself. But thank you for those words. Ambassador Dango, now let's go right to the workforce. I have heard a theory that the reason for low female representation in very senior jobs is because the majority of women are just not that interested in them. Could this be a result of them struggling to get to their current level and an aversion to stretch a little bit further? I've also heard a number of times that women are notoriously more difficult on other females as managers. Do you think this is true, and why?
So you saved the most difficult question for me at the end, huh? No, again, thank you for this initiative and for inviting me to participate in this panel. I think, well, I come from a country, to be honest, that has been very supportive to women in high professional posts, starting from my president, who's a lady. But I think I've seen both. In some, I've seen ladies who actually, like my colleague just mentioned, made so many personal sacrifices that, even family sacrifices, that they decided that they had reached the level and they wanted to stay there. But some others, it's just basically, I think, that there was not a conducive environment for them to continue on their career. Whereas women can be more difficult. I think it depends. Again, I say I've seen both attitudes. Some have said, no, it was very difficult for me to come here. I could say, you know, it was difficult for me, for example, to be an engineer in a male environment. So they have to go through the same thing because in the end it shaped me into what I am. Others, and I think I place myself in that area, see that because of what I went through, maybe if I can make it easier for the next younger generations, I'll put my little bit of support in that area. So.
Very good. Ambassador Dango, can you tell us about one of your mentors, male or female, who had a major impact in your career? What piece of advice were you given that you would give to others today?
I would like to mention two people, and this is basically my parents, because they came from completely different areas, and the advice that they gave me, and my father, who was also an engineer, told me you can do anything you want to set your mind to. And my mother said, but don't forget that you have to follow your heart. So basically, I combined the two things. I just decided that I could do anything that I could put my heart into. And I think this is the advice that I like to give to young people in general, and not only to young females. Just make sure that whatever you're going to do, you love doing it.
Great advice. Ambassador de Aljushek, what is your opinion of the view that successful professional women can't really achieve work-life balance? You alluded to this in your statement before, that there were women at the top who you didn't want to be like them. They'd probably sacrificed too much. Do you think that professional women need to make a choice between work and family? And can you share some of your experiences? And in particular, I'd love to hear your views about handling the trailing spouse.
Okay. I think you can combine the sort of career I've had with having a family, because I have. I wouldn't for 1 minute claim it had been easy every day. And I think there are a number of things which have made it possible. I mean, to explain, I do have a trailing spouse and 2 teenage sons. And I have worked all the way through. I have worked full-time all the way through, but one of the reasons that's been possible is because my husband has not worked full-time. And I would, I mean, it sounds quite brutal to say it this way, but I'd say he has sacrificed a career in order to allow me to have mine. I mean, he works, he's always worked, but he has a job rather than a career. And that's a compromise that he's had to make, and I think I'm very grateful to him for having done it. And I consider myself enormously lucky to have found somebody who's been willing to do that. I have a favourite quote from Oprah Winfrey, who said, "You can have it all, you just can't have it all at the same time." And I think that's a really good thing to bear in mind, because it's not, it's a challenge, and it involves daily compromises. But one of the ways that we have been able to do it is by taking our children around the world with us. I don't think my sons have suffered from that. I think children are endlessly adaptable, and they've never known anything else. I think it's made us a much closer family than we might have been otherwise, because every time we have gone to a new place, we have stuck very closely together. And on dealing with the trailing spouse, I would say understanding how difficult it is. You know, when I arrive somewhere new, my job is there, my work environment is there, and it's very clear what I'm expected to do. For my husband, that is not the case. And I think with a trailing male spouse, it is more challenging than with a trailing female spouse. Because just to give you one example, what is the support network here called? It's called the UN Women's Guild. And so it is difficult for a male spouse to establish an identity apart from just being my husband. And I think it's something that I need to think about all the time. And I am shamelessly promoting my husband's job search everywhere I go, and I've done it everywhere else I've been. But I do think it's for me, the fact that I have been able to rely on him has made it possible for me to get where I am.
So true, to have that support network. Well, maybe our husbands should get together sometime. I think that what you said is really, it's difficult for the trailing spouse. And I know that many people stop their careers because of that consideration, that they're 2 working partners, and to disrupt that, to go on an international path is really challenging. But I think you found the silver linings, bringing your family together, having these great bonding experiences, the exposure to all over the world. Those are wonderful experiences, and families can benefit from that. Thank you for your story. Your Royal Highness, can you share a story of a memorable success or failure in your career? Why was it important? What did you learn from it? And how has it impacted you going forward?
I think in everybody's life, we all have success and failure, either big or small. If talking in terms of success, I would not say that I'm a very successful person yet, because everyday life is a learning process. You learn new things every day, and you can achieve your success either big or small every day. It's like capacity building. And if you're talking in terms of failures, of course, everybody's life, including me, facing with some failures. Sometimes because we are aiming too high or underestimating some small things, or sometimes we are not certain on our goals, we're not aiming high enough, or maybe not courageous enough. That's the cause of my failures in many times. But I use failure as an experience to rethink again, what have I done wrong? And the next time I will correct it, and with more courage, with more imagination, and with more knowledge. And I think I'm still learning every day, such as the work with the IAEA. It's my totally new thing. But since I resumed my duty as a member of the Board of Governors, so I'm trying to study, I'm trying to learn from my colleagues, I'm learning from my report. And of course, thank you, Director General Amano, for having several conversations with me. I do also learn a lot from you as well. And by listening to the statements of the board, I'm learning already. Thank you very much.
That's great. Ambassador Algayarova, oftentimes I've heard from women themselves that they got to where they are because they were lucky. It was pure luck. What are your thoughts about this thought of being in the right place at the right time? Or is there something more to it?
I think there is something more to it. Of course, sometimes you need also the good and right moment to be in some right place. And if it is all together, so this is a luck. That can sometimes happen. However, we always many times hear that there are higher expectations from women to get the same job as for men. I'm totally not a person that would like to position men and women on antagonist positions. It's the opposite. It is both of them are the same part of the same whole picture. And therefore, what is good for women is good also for men, because they are part of their families. So the men have their mothers, sisters, daughters. So we are not antagonists. But I really think that for women, there are sometimes higher expectations to get some post. For me, yes, probably I was at the right time, at the right place when getting nomination from my government. However, it was also my reputation, because I am very, I was working with very big assets, and I was always very transparent. So it's about setting some values that go with a person and doesn't depend, it's with men or women the whole life. And if they know about you, if you have a good reputation, and at the same time, if you happen to be at the right time, at the right place, so then it can go.
It can go well,
yeah.
Yes. Well, it's interesting you said that about men and having mothers, sisters. All the successful men that I've known have had really strong, powerful women behind them, whether it was a mother or several sisters. They seem to have succeeded well because the women wouldn't let them fail, okay? And I thought that was kind of an interesting lesson in life, that, that behind these successful men, there were always strong women. Ambassador Leosi, through your accomplished career, what have you learned about yourself? And from that, what would you tell young women today?
Yeah, thank you again. First and foremost, I know that I've been exceptionally fortunate. I don't know, but how that came, I don't know, but I've been fortunate, I would say that. Men who were my seniors have always promoted me, and not because of anything, but I think also it's because of the attitude that I have. For every woman, every young woman, I would advise an attitude of gratitude to serve. Because when you are happy, when you are grateful that you have an opportunity to serve, I mean, your attitude to it is different. And then I also advise an attitude of stewardship. You must be willing to see that you are making some contribution. You need also to have a can-do attitude. You know, don't see obstacles or difficulties. Just tell yourself, I think I can do it. Yes, I can do it. For me, that's why I said the men see that attitude in me. They say, you want something, don't give it to Miss Lau, she'll do it. Because I will just do it. And many of my male bosses didn't know me. They saw my job first, and they said, oh, you're that woman. But I have that attitude of, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. And then I move on. And then a gentleman said something 3 days ago, and I saw that it applied to me. I mean, last week, he asked 3 questions. He said, do you like your job? I think I like mine. Do you enjoy your job? I think I enjoy mine. He said, does your job train you or energize you? My job energizes me. If I make the mistake of going to my office before doing anything that I have to do, the thing is forgotten that day. Because I have to be dragged out of my office. Once I start working, you have to pull me out of it. And I think that attitude is very helpful.
Very good. Well, I wanted to open the floor. If anybody from the audience has a question to ask any of our guests here, please step forward. Everyone is shy. Well, then I want to encourage, oh, please, Laura.
Leave it to me to intervene. I just, I find it so satisfying, so impressive to see such a broad range of female talent here and different backgrounds and how you've arrived to where you are. It's just really exciting for a woman to see. And one of the points that I liked most was this idea that men and women are part of the same whole. And if women are raised up, men are raised up as well. It shouldn't be an either-or situation. So, Janice, thank you so much for doing this. Really terrific.
Great. Thank you for that comment, Laura. I appreciate it. Other comments or questions?
Come on, Jerry.
Oh,
Jerry Barton, I'm a little bit out of the active work scene now, representing the retirees. So my question is, what role would the older people perform in mentoring, in supporting? What would you have needed more in your career from perhaps grandparents and so on? Thank you.
Ladies?
I think what people who have a depth of experience can give is absolutely invaluable. And I think many organisations can make too much of the fact that we need new young talent and ignore the wealth of experience and wisdom that exists amongst people who've been around for a long time. And one of the things that the Foreign Office has tried to do is set up an alumni organisation, so for people who've retired or people who've gone on from a diplomatic career to do other things, in order to draw on that wisdom and knowledge, first of all to improve the way that we work now, but also to make sure we don't make the same mistakes twice over.
Good advice, yes. Please.
Maybe you know, but last year was in the European Union the year of active aging and of intergenerational solidarity. And I was responsible for this agenda at the Prime Minister's office. And we're speaking very much about all the seniors and how they can live actively, how to help them and what does it mean, the intergenerational solidarity? Because young people think that the older people shouldn't work anymore because they are taking their jobs, and how the older people how we can use their know-how, experience, even from the point of view that they are maybe not so technically able to use computers, etc., etc. However, there is a lot of wisdom in older generations. So I wanted just to tell you that it was last year, was the year of active aging and of intergenerational solidarity, and there was a lot of topics discussed in this context. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Yes.
More than a question, I would like to say thank you very much for the ladies who organized this event and for the ladies in the panel. It has been fantastic, and you have spoken very open of many different situations during your career and your work. I also would like to say thank you very much for Mr. Damano. It was very, very nice words what he mentioned at the very beginning. And surprisingly, I have to say also congratulations to the gentlemen who are today with us. It's very nice that they are present and recognizing that we deserve not only once a year an International Day, it's the whole year, and we have the example with the ladies in the panel and the other visitors. Thank you very much. Has been great.
That's an excellent comment. I think there was one more question, yes?
Yes. My name is Nicole Maas from the Dutch mission here in Vienna. I was really happy with the words of the UK ambassador because I really think she's so right. It's nice to have a husband who supports you and who goes with you, and it's more difficult for him to be abroad than it is for women to join their partners. My question is about role models. I work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for 12.5 years now, and it's the first time here in Vienna that I have a female boss, and I'm really happy with that. But I was thinking about it, but I do look into the organization and see who could be my role model. I would like to know from some of the women, who was your most important role model and what did they teach you?
So, please. You said it was your mother and your aunt, I think.
I had, for instance, I was not so lucky to have female mentors or managers. When I came to pharmaceutical industry, I was not, well, we didn't speak here about education because this is the equal for men and women. So if one wants to get some leading position, must be, of course, properly educated. This is valid for both sexes. But coming to pharmaceutical industry, I had a very good manager. His name was Charles, and he was very caring, spending with me hours and speaking, talking. At the other side, at the other hand, he was empowering me. He was giving me full liberty in what I was doing. So I will not forget him. And another very good model was ex-foreign minister of Slovakia. Today he's a UN envoy to Afghanistan, Mr. Jan Kubiš, who was very experienced diplomat, and I was really new in diplomacy. He was not spending so much time with me. He was giving me a space. He was just really empowering me. And it was for me a big responsibility. So I wanted to pay him back his trust. And this is a big lesson for me.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Yes?
If I can answer a bit of that question. When I got into working in the international organizations, international community, here in Vienna, for instance, there was a lady that came to speak to us, I think, in 2005 during International Women's Day. I don't remember the lady's name, but she was a high representative appointed by the United Nations Secretary General. And she was sort of role model for me in that she made me understand what to expect and how to live with it. She told us that many times when she went with the United Nations Secretary General then, Dag Hammarskjöld, they would ask her if she was the secretary or if she was the wife. And that even where she was working, men tried to patronize her. They started by seeing her as a mother. Then when she didn't agree with them again, they turned her into a prostitute. And very soon after, she became a witch. So I said, oh, so I have to get used to this. I had been called names, and I didn't like it. But the day she said it, I prepared myself to graduate from mother, prostitute to witch, and it didn't bother me.
Is there anybody else who'd like to share mentors?
I think for me there have been two groups of people. Within my own family, I have an aunt who was quite unusual in her generation. She decided to become a journalist and went off and travelled and became a foreign correspondent. And as I grew up, I always thought she was an incredibly glamorous figure. And I lived in a small town in England. She lived in China. It was quite glamorous. And she had children and a husband and so on. And then within my work environment, I mean, rather like my Slovakian colleague, I was given a chance by somebody who saw potential in me that I didn't, I think, even recognise in myself. And him having put that trust in me and encouraged me to apply for my previous job, I was absolutely determined I was going to do it very, very well. And as well as giving me the chance, he showed me that you could be yourself and that there wasn't a particular mould that you had to fit into. I think, you know, in the world that we all work in, you can get dragged into being some sort of identikit diplomat. And he showed me that actually there's all sorts of different ways that you can do the job, and that was a really important lesson for me.
I might share my own story in that regard. I had two mentors that I give lots of credit to. They weren't really acting as my mentors, they were really my bosses. And this is when I worked at the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission in Washington, D.C., where I spent the bulk of my career. One was a man, his name was Lando Zek. He was a former admiral, and he taught me about public service and what it meant to serve your country. And I was very impressionable at the time. I just started my career, but it was so deep and so heartfelt that it has stuck with me forever. And he couldn't praise public servants enough, that we were really doing things for our country, and that it was just this really great feeling. And he was the kind of motivator. You wanted to just keep working harder for him, you know, and he had this way of inspiring you, and it was all about public service and country. Another person that I worked for, her name was Shirley Jackson, and she was also the chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. She was the toughest boss that I ever had. Here we go, a woman, really tough, but she was tough on both men and women. But she taught me to aim really high. Her father said to her, shoot for the stars, okay? The possibilities are endless. But the thing that I think I appreciated most was her way of getting to the success. The goal line sometimes seems so far away. And she told me, you gotta take your success in really small steps, because every step is a success. And that has stuck with me too, that we can't always just leap over there because you get frustrated. And it's really, sometimes it's too long, it's too frustrating, it just takes too much. But if you can take steps towards that goal, you know, it makes you feel good. So I think that was really great advice, and something that has also lasted with me. Okay, any other questions? All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeanette Donner. I'm from the Department of Safeguards. Thank you very much. These were very encouraging words. My question is, why do you think women still fail? We see in the statistic, either in business or non-profit organization, that the number of women in senior position is still very low. So do you think is it lack of talent, education, because of your children, or because of the network that women still don't have?
Who wants to answer that? Okay.
So networking, you mentioned, is very, very important. You need to establish your networks, not only in your business environment, but also in your, within your friends, then in your sport environment. You have to find somebody for emotional support. And maybe in networking are men better, because, well, they are used to this networking, and we are some, it's my personal feeling. Networking is education, there is no issue about it. And we cannot name it failure, what women are doing. That's true. Women are represented less in leading positions, depending on the culture of the country, depending on political quotas, for instance, if the country has the quotas. But networking, I see it as one of the crucial points on that.
I said earlier, which is that I think women limit themselves. I think there are too many women who don't aim high. There's a statistic that if a woman looks at a job specification and can only do 80% of that job, the woman will say, I'm not going to try. A man looks at the same job specification, and if he can do 30%, he will apply for the job. And I think it's a really telling statistic. There are too many women who don't dare to try. Once they do, they succeed. But I think there's a real element to it. There's a sense in which we limit ourselves.
And I think another problem is that there's too few of them at the top, so when they do fail, you see it. It's a blemish. It's very evident, and I think that's unfortunate. But I think there's some success stories out there, too. I think we're seeing more and more women in the corporate world, in the finance world, and I think they are successful. So, I'm encouraged by that. But I think, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, it was probably, there were few and you would see when they failed, and that was a very public thing. So hopefully the trend is going to go in a different direction. Well, I think I'm going to bring this session to a close. I think we've had a really interesting discussion this afternoon. It's clear that our 5 distinguished panelists have achieved great success in their careers and are really excellent role models for young women everywhere. Their success tells us that women have made tremendous progress in terms of gender equality and fairness. I believe that these women are convincing evidence for other young women that there are careers to be made in international work. Whether technical or diplomacy, the possibilities are endless. So ladies, go for it. We should realize, though, that more needs to be done in terms of increasing the inclusion of women in the socio-economic and political arenas, and of finding ways to unlock the potential and opportunities that await future generations of women. In this regard, the empowerment of women continues to be a central feature of the efforts of the United Nations. One of the biggest challenges is the issue of violence towards women, and the UN theme this year is that for International Women's Day. My colleague, Mira Venkatesh, will be speaking on this subject on Friday, March the 8th, so I urge you all to attend. This is an event that's being sponsored by Women in Nuclear, and I also want to put a plug in for their exhibit, which is down the stairs. There's a lot of information there for those of you who want to join and or just to be familiar with the network, because the network is actually very good. I've gone to a number of events throughout my career, and I think it's a really great way to meet other women and be inspired by different kinds of work, but it's a community of women in nuclear. Before concluding, I want to thank our distinguished panelists who have given us their time and their valuable insights. I'd also like to thank the Director General for attending this meeting, and my thanks also goes to the Secretariat, especially Catherine Monzel and Julie Ford, who were involved in organizing this event.